My husband picked up the silver pen his lawyer had placed on the conference table in front of him, on the 21st floor of a downtown Washington law firm, on a Wednesday morning in October, and he smiled. He smiled the way a man smiles when he has spent 11 months planning a moment, and the moment has finally arrived. He looked across the table at me. He looked at my lawyer. He looked at the stack of divorce papers between us, the settlement agreement he had drafted, the property division he had proposed, the alimony schedule he had negotiated with himself for months, before I had even known the marriage was ending. He looked back at me. He said, "Catherine, I want you to know, I bear you no ill will. I hope we can be friends someday." And then, still smiling, he signed his name at the bottom of page 1. His lawyer, a man named Preston Whitfield of Whitfield, Ashford and Grant, reached across the table and slid the papers over to my lawyer. My lawyer, a woman named Elena Vasquez, opened her briefcase. She pulled out a single manila folder. She set the folder on the table. She did not open it. She said, "Preston, before your client signs page 2, there's something you need to see. The marriage. My name is Catherine Marchetti. I am 46 years old. I have worked for the United States Department of Defense for 22 years, first as a civilian analyst in the Office of Net Assessment, and for the last 9 years as a senior intelligence officer in a joint program office whose exact designation I am not going to speak on this recording. I met my husband, Adrian Marchetti, in 2011. I was 32. I was in my 6th year at the Pentagon, 3 years into a marriage to a Naval Academy classmate that had, quietly and without answer of us being cruel about it, ended by mutual agreement the previous spring. Adrian was 35. He was a management consultant at a firm called Harrington Blake, based in Tysons Corner, Virginia. His practice was healthcare, hospital systems, insurance carriers, pharmaceutical clients. He had, by 2011, been on the fast track at Harrington Blake for 9 years, and he was, by any reasonable Washington area metric, doing well. We met at a Kennedy Center gala for a friend's foundation. I remember the way he introduced himself. He said, "Adrian Marchetti, consulting. What do you do?" I said, "Catherine Powell." "Government?" He said, "State? Justice?" I said, "Defense." He said, "Analyst?" I said, "Something like that." He smiled. He said, "Catherine, I have a rule at these things. I do not press people who work in your building on what they do. If you want to tell me, you'll tell me. If you don't, I already know enough. Would you like a glass of champagne?" I liked him for that. I want to be honest about it. Because for the first 4 years of our relationship, 3 of dating, 1 of engagement, Adrian was, in the ways that mattered to me, exceptional. He never asked what I did. He never pressed on details. He never tried to look at documents I brought home in my briefcase. When I traveled, sometimes for weeks at a time, sometimes to places I could not name, he did not ask where. He picked me up from Dulles. He made me dinner. He let me sleep. We married in 2013. For the first 5 years, our marriage was, if not extraordinary, then quietly good. Adrian's career at Harrington Blake continued to accelerate. He made senior partner in 2015. His compensation roughly quadrupled between 2013 and 2018. We bought a house in McLean, a 5-bedroom colonial on a half-acre lot, walking distance to the country club Adrian's firm expected its partners to belong to. Adrian joined the club in 2016. I did not. The first change came in 2018. I want to explain what happened in 2018, because it is the beginning of the end. In 2018, my career reached a level that my husband had not, until that point, actually understood. I was selected for a role that required a specific and unusually high level of security clearance. I cannot describe the role. What I can describe is what it looked like from Adrian's side of our marriage. It looked like this. I started leaving the house at 5:30 in the morning. I started coming home at 8 in the evening. I was required, on approximately 1 weekend per month, to be reachable within 30 minutes at all times. I acquired, and Adrian noticed, a government-issued cell phone that lived in a small safe next to my nightstand and was answered only in a designated closet in our home office that I had, in the summer of 2018, converted into what security professionals call a SIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. Adrian did not at first react. For approximately 6 months in 2018, Adrian was proud of me. He told his mother, a woman named Grace Marchetti, 68 years old, of Bethesda, Maryland, that his wife had been promoted to a very senior position at the Pentagon. He mentioned it, obliquely, at his firm's Christmas party. He introduced me, at his golf club, as my wife Catherine. She's a big deal at defense. Then, gradually, over the course of 2019 and 2020, something shifted. Adrian began, in a way I could not quite name at first, to become uncomfortable. He stopped mentioning my career at his firm's events. He stopped introducing me as anything other than my wife Catherine. When his mother asked about my job, she asked every Sunday dinner whether I was still doing the government thing. Adrian would answer for me. He would say, "Mom, Catherine's still at defense. Same as always." He would change the subject. I noticed, but I did not push. I did not push because I was busy. I did not push because the marriage still functioned. I did not push because Adrian was, in the ways that were visible in a 5-bedroom colonial in McLean, still a good husband. He came to my sister's 40th birthday. He remembered my father's birthday. He was, when I came home late, waiting up with a glass of wine and a warmed plate. But something was moving underneath. In the summer of 2022, I remember this because it was my 43rd birthday, and Adrian had planned a small dinner for us at a restaurant in Georgetown. I opened the wrong drawer in Adrian's home office. I was looking for a pen. I found instead a folder. The folder was labeled K, Financial Overview. It was not a folder I had ever seen before. I did not open the folder. I want to be clear about that. In 22 years at the Pentagon, I had learned certain habits. One of those habits was, if you find a document that is not addressed to you and that you do not have a clear operational need to review, you do not open it. You note where you found it, you note what it looks like, you close the drawer, and you make a decision, later, about whether the document needs to be understood. I closed the drawer, I made a mental note, and I did nothing about it for 11 months. I did nothing about it because I did not, at that point, believe my husband was capable of what the folder, if I was reading it correctly, appeared to suggest. I believed my husband loved me. I believed the marriage was, on balance, worth continuing. I believed that if I opened that drawer and confronted what was in it, I would set in motion something I could not stop. So I waited. I waited to see what my husband would do. The folder Adrian filed for divorce on the 7th of September of last year. He filed on a Thursday. I was in Warsaw, Poland, on official travel. I had been out of the country for 11 days. I received the filing by encrypted email at 4:12 a.m. local time, from Elena Vasquez, whom I had, 6 months earlier, quietly retained on personal matters. The filing said, in the standard boilerplate, irreconcilable differences. The proposed settlement, which Adrian's lawyer had, apparently, been drafting for months, was extraordinary. It proposed that Adrian would keep the house in McLean, which had been purchased in 2016, for $2.4 million, and was now, per current comparable sales, worth approximately $3.8 million. It proposed that Adrian would keep his 401k, his firm profit-sharing account, and his non-qualified deferred compensation account, a combined balance of approximately $4.1 million. It proposed that Adrian would keep his stake in a private investment partnership that his firm had structured for its senior partners in 2019, currently valued at approximately $2.7 million. It proposed that Adrian would keep the vacation house in Rehoboth Beach, purchased in 2020 for $1.8 million. It proposed that Adrian would pay me a lump sum settlement of $500,000 and that I would waive all future claims to spousal support. It proposed, in short, that after 11 years of marriage, during which my salary had paid the mortgage on the McLean house for the first 2 years, while Adrian's firm profit-sharing account was still ramping up, and during which my clearance and security requirements had shaped where we lived, when we traveled, and how we entertained, I would walk away with approximately 5% of the combined marital estate. I read the filing in a hotel room in Warsaw at 4:12 a.m. I did not react. I opened my laptop. I sent Elena 3 lines. Received. In agreement with the strategy we discussed, please proceed with what we prepared. K. I closed the laptop. I got dressed. I went to my meetings. I want to explain what I meant by what we prepared, because it is the entire point of this story. 6 months earlier, in the spring of last year, after I had noticed a second folder in Adrian's office and had begun, for the first time in 11 months, to consider what was going on, I had made a decision. I had decided that if I was going to protect myself, I could not do it the way most Washington area professional women do it, which is to hire the most expensive family law attorney they can afford and go to war. I could not go to war. I could not go to war because war is public, and my career could not withstand public. Instead, I had done something else. I had, in April of last year, filed a series of documents with the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, a routine periodic reinvestigation update, in which I had reported to my agency, as required by federal regulation, that I had observed patterns in my husband's financial behavior that I believed warranted internal review. This was not a criminal referral. It was not a complaint. It was, in the very specific language of my clearance requirements, a self-report of a domestic situation potentially bearing on continued eligibility. The self-report triggered, as I knew it would, a small, quiet, internal financial review by my agency's security office. That review, conducted between April and August of last year, uncovered three things. The first thing it uncovered was that my husband had, since 2019, been diverting a portion of his post-tax income into an investment account held in his name only, at a small brokerage in Delaware, that he had not disclosed on our joint federal tax returns. The second thing it uncovered was that my husband had, in 2021, purchased a small commercial property in Naples, Florida, using funds from that account, and had titled the property solely in his name. The third thing it uncovered was that my husband had, in 2022, opened a joint checking account with a woman named Vanessa Coletta, 34 years old, a marketing director at a healthcare technology company that was, coincidentally, one of Adrian's firm's clients, into which Adrian had been depositing approximately $8,000 per month for the previous 19 months. The security review concluded that none of these findings constituted a national security concern requiring my clearance to be modified. My personal financial standing was not compromised. My exposure to coercion was minimal, but the review had, as a byproduct of its process, generated a very detailed forensic accounting of every financial move my husband had made in the previous 6 years. That forensic accounting was, legally, under my agency's document retention policies, my property, and I had, in July of last year, provided it to Elena Vasquez. Elena had, by September, quietly identified for me the total value of the assets my husband had hidden from the marital estate. The undisclosed brokerage account, $1.9 million. The Naples property, $840,000. The Vanessa Coletta account, $152,000 over 19 months. Total hidden assets, $2.9 million. None of it disclosed in his divorce filing. I flew back from Warsaw on the 11th of September. I did not confront Adrian. I did not send him an email. I did not, as many people expected me to do when they later learned the story, call him from Dulles Airport and read him the funeral. I did nothing. I let him believe I had accepted the settlement. I let him believe I was going to sign. For 6 weeks, from mid-September to late October, I lived in the McLean house with a man who thought he had won. He was, in that 6 weeks, careful with me. He made me dinner twice. He suggested we keep things civil and handle the paperwork with dignity. He told me on one particular Sunday morning over coffee that he hoped we could remain in each other's lives, in some form someday. I said, "Adrian, I appreciate that." I signed nothing, I said nothing, and on the 23rd of October at 10 a.m., I walked into the 21st floor conference room at Whitfield, Ashford & Grant in downtown Washington, sat down across from my husband, and watched him pick up a silver pen. The conference room, Preston Whitfield, Adrian's lawyer, was a man in his late 50s. Silver hair, a three-piece charcoal suit, cufflinks that caught the light from the windows overlooking Franklin Square. He was, I had been told by Elena, one of the most expensive family law attorneys in the District of Columbia. His hourly rate was $1,850. He was known, in the D.C. family law bar, as the attorney rich men hired when they wanted to win. Preston smiled at Elena when she opened her briefcase. He smiled at her the way an experienced litigator smiles at opposing counsel he has already, in his mind, defeated. Elena did not smile back. She took out the single manila folder. She placed it on the conference table. She did not open it. She said, "Preston, before your client signs page 2, there's something you need to see." Preston said, "Elena, I appreciate the drama. What is it?" Elena said, "Preston, this folder contains documentation of financial disclosures your client made, and did not make, under oath, in the settlement agreement in front of him. I have provided a copy to Mr. Marchetti's counsel as a professional courtesy. I would like to give you 5 minutes to review it before your client executes page 2. Preston's smile did not change, but something behind his eyes did. He said, Elena, what kind of documentation? Elena said, Preston, please just look at it. She slid the folder across the table. Preston opened the folder. I want to describe what happened next as precisely as I can, because it was the most controlled and elegant piece of legal choreography I have ever witnessed. Preston Whitfield read the first page. It was a summary. 15 bullet points. Undisclosed brokerage account. Naples commercial property. The joint checking account with Vanessa Coletta. Dollar figures. Dates. Account numbers. Preston's face did not move. He read the second page. It was documentation. Copies of quarterly statements from the Delaware brokerage, bank statements from the Naples property mortgage, deposit records from the Vanessa Coletta account. Preston's face still did not move, but he did, once, glance up at Adrian. Adrian was still smiling. Preston read the third page. The third page was a single document. It was a cover memo. It was on plain white paper, no letterhead. It was 3 paragraphs long. It was signed, at the bottom, by an official from a federal agency whose seal Preston Whitfield recognized instantly. The memo said, in essence, that the forensic accounting attached to the memo had been generated as part of an official government inquiry, and that it had been provided to Catherine Marchetti through appropriate channels for her personal use, and that any legal action initiated in reliance upon the accounting would be treated by the originating agency as a matter of institutional interest. Preston Whitfield closed the folder. He set it down on the conference table. He did not look at Adrian. He looked at Elena. He said, Elena, may I have a 5-minute recess with my client? Elena said, Preston, of course. Please take 10. Preston stood up. He said, Adrian, come with me. Adrian said, Preston, what? Preston said, quietly, without looking at him. Adrian, now please. They left the conference room. Elena and I sat in silence for approximately 11 minutes. Elena did not speak. I did not speak. There was a small silver carafe of coffee on the table. Neither of us poured any. At the 11-minute mark, Preston came back into the conference room, alone. He sat down. He looked at Elena, then he looked at me. He said, Mrs. Marchetti, my client would like to request an adjournment of these proceedings. He would like to review the settlement agreement with his counsel and, in his words, reconsider his position. Elena said, Preston, that is fine. When would you like to reconvene? Preston said, Elena, I would like to reconvene, if it is convenient to your client, in 30 days. I would also like to inform you that my client has, effective this morning, instructed me to withdraw the current settlement agreement in its entirety and to prepare a revised agreement in consultation with your office. Elena said, Preston, that is also fine. We will look forward to receiving the revised proposal. Preston nodded. He stood up. He offered me his hand. I stood up. I shook his hand. He said, very quietly, Mrs. Marchetti, I owe you an apology. I was not fully briefed on the circumstances of this matter. If I had been, I would have counseled my client differently at the outset. Please accept my professional regret. I said, Preston, thank you. I appreciate that. He left the conference room. Adrian was in the hallway outside the conference room. I saw him through the glass door as I gathered my things. He was leaning against the wall. He was pale. He was staring at the floor. His silver pen, the one he had used to sign page 1, was still in his hand. He did not look up as I walked past him. I did not stop. Elena and I walked out of Whitfield, Ashford and Grant at 10:47 a.m. We walked to a small coffee shop 3 blocks away. Elena ordered a black coffee. I ordered a chamomile tea. We sat at a small table by the window. Elena said, Catherine, are you all right? I said, Elena, I am fine. She said, Catherine, what just happened in that room? I want you to understand it, because I am going to say this once, and then I am not going to say it again. Your husband spent 11 months planning to leave you with 5% of a marriage. Your government spent 4 months, at your request, documenting exactly what he was hiding, and I spent 3 months preparing the document that just, in the space of 11 minutes, transferred the entire legal position of this divorce, from him to you. You are not going to lose this divorce. You are going to receive, at minimum, 60% of a fully disclosed marital estate. And your husband is not going to fight you. Because if he fights you, that folder becomes public. And if that folder becomes public, his firm learns about the Vanessa Coletta account, and his firm's board of directors, if I am reading their compensation clawback provisions correctly, will initiate a review of his partnership status by the end of the fiscal quarter. Do you understand what I am telling you? I said, Elena, I understand. She said, Catherine, are you all right? I said, Elena, ask me again in 6 months. She nodded. We drank our coffee and tea in silence. The settlement. And after Adrian's revised settlement offer arrived at Elena's office 19 days later, it was substantially different from the first one. It proposed that the house in McLean would be sold, with the proceeds, approximately $3.4 million after commissions and closing costs, divided equally. It proposed that Adrian's retirement accounts would be split 50-50 per the qualified domestic relations order process. It proposed that the vacation house in Rehoboth would be sold, with proceeds divided equally. It proposed that Adrian's stake in the firm's private investment partnership would be transferred, in equivalent cash value, to my accounts within 90 days of settlement. It proposed that the previously undisclosed brokerage account, $1.9 million, would be transferred to me in its entirety, in acknowledgement that Adrian had failed to disclose it in the initial filing. It proposed that the Naples commercial property would be transferred to me in its entirety. It proposed a lump sum equalization payment of $600,000 to reflect the disparate financial contributions to the marriage during the first 3 years. It proposed no alimony, on the understanding that I did not need it. Elena negotiated for 4 additional weeks. The final settlement, signed on the 11th of December of last year, provided me with approximately $6.7 million in assets, plus my share of Adrian's retirement accounts, plus the Naples property. Adrian received the McLean house net of a substantial equalization payment, his stake in the partnership, and his share of the retirement accounts. Adrian did not smile when he signed the final papers. Vanessa Coletta, I have been told, ended her relationship with Adrian approximately 3 weeks after the settlement was signed. I do not know why. I did not ask. I have never met Vanessa Coletta. I do not intend to. Adrian's mother, Grace Marchetti, called me in January. She wanted to have lunch. I said I was not ready. She said she understood. I sold my share of the McLean house back to Adrian at the market value. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Georgetown in February. It has a small balcony that faces east. In the mornings, when the light comes in over the Potomac, I drink my coffee on the balcony. I have started running again. 3 miles, 4 mornings a week, along the C&O Canal. I have not, since the settlement was signed, spent a single night in the McLean house. I sold the Naples property in April. It had appreciated. I used the proceeds to establish a small charitable fund at Georgetown University, in my late father's name, supporting first-generation college students in the sciences. I do not need the money. The fund makes me feel better about the money. I still work at the Pentagon. I still have my clearance. Preston Whitfield sent me a handwritten note in February. It was 1 paragraph long. It said, Mrs. Marchetti, in 31 years of practice, I have never encountered a more elegantly prepared position. I hope our paths cross professionally someday, on the same side. P.W. I have that note in a small drawer in my Georgetown apartment. My sister Angela called me last week. She lives in Chicago. She has been, through this entire process, the only person I have really talked to. She asked me, over the phone, whether I was happy. I thought about it for a long time. I said, Angela, I am not happy yet. I am something else. I am not carrying anything anymore. That is a different thing from happy. I think happy comes later. But I am not carrying anything. And I have not been not carrying anything since I was maybe 28. Angela was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Kate, that sounds like a good place to start. I said, Ang, I think it is. I want to tell you one last thing, because I think it matters. 6 weeks after the settlement was signed, I received an inter-office envelope at my Pentagon office. It contained a single document. It was a copy of my most recent periodic clearance reinvestigation summary. It had been signed off by the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency on the previous Friday. At the bottom of the summary, in the section reserved for the reviewing officer's notes, someone had written, Subject's handling of recent domestic financial matter demonstrates the judgment, discretion, and institutional integrity that this program depends on. Reviewer notes with appreciation the subject's decision to route this matter through appropriate channels rather than public litigation. Clearance renewed with full endorsement. Jr. I read the note twice. I put the summary in my safe. I went home that evening. I ran 3 miles along the canal. I made myself dinner. I sat on my balcony with a glass of white wine and I watched the sun set over the river. I did not think about my husband. I did not think about the house in McLean. I did not think about the silver pen, or the conference room, or the 11 months my husband had spent planning to leave me with 5% of a marriage. I thought about my father, who had died in 2011, 3 months before I met Adrian at the Kennedy Center Gala. My father had been a chemistry teacher at a small high school in western Pennsylvania. He had, throughout my childhood, told me one thing more than any other. He had said, "Catherine, in every important room you enter, someone in that room is going to underestimate you. Let them. Do not correct them. The correction is not your job. The correction is theirs, when they figure it out on their own." Dad, I did what you said. They figured it out. If you have ever spent months in a marriage that was, without your knowledge, already ending, if you have ever watched someone you loved smile while they were preparing to take everything from you, I want you to leave one word in the comments below. Just one word. The month you first knew, even if you did not yet let yourself know. Not the month of the confrontation. The month of the first small quiet knowing. Because someone in this comment section is going to see your month, and they are going to remember to trust the small quiet knowing when it comes to them. And if this story reminded you that preparation, patience, and paperwork will always defeat charm and confidence, subscribe. Because next week, I am telling you about a family that sat me at the kids' table at Christmas. The White House called during dinner. I'll see you there.